for Halloween this year, my kids had, for the very first time in their lives, discovered that they are fans of Star Wars. I tried to introduce them to Star Wars a couple times and it never quite took, and once I stopped trying, they discovered it on their own, and lo and behold, I have a bunch of little Star Wars fans. So they told me that they want to be various Star Wars characters. You can see behind me, there is Fives' helmet. My son wants to be ARC Trooper Fives. So I began 3D printing the helmets and the armor, and I'm getting that together. And my daughter decided that she wanted to be Sabine Wren. More specifically, she wanted to be Sabine Wren in the finale of Star Wars Rebels. I did some research and found that there is not a lot of directions or tutorials online on how to create Sabine's armor. So I'm going to attempt to fill that gap. I have here a Mandalorian helmet that is 3D printed, and I have covered it with primer and then spray painted a relatively thin coat of a metallic silver on. So not a lot done to it, only the coat of the primer and the coat of the silver. And what I'm gonna do now is go ahead and, well, first I wanna show you that I did a thin coat on purpose. And I want you to see these pot marks and whatnot inside the helmet. It's not perfectly smooth. And that's how we want it. However, we want a nice mix of smooth as well as the pot marks, because this helmet is, as Sabine states in the show, thousands of years old. It's been handed down from generation after generation of Mandalorians. So we don't want it to be in perfect condition. We want it to be in used condition. So the next step after printing the helmet, after putting a coat of primer on the helmet, and after putting a coat of a metallic silver that isn't really shiny on the helmet, is I'm going to sand it with 300 grit sandpaper. Lightly. I don't want it to be perfect, and the idea is that I want to dull the metallic silver, and I want maybe a little bit of a mix in certain spots of the primer to come through the metallic to see that it's worn, and I want some of it to be really smooth, like objects become smooth over time as they're weathered, and they become pot marked as certain elements of battle damage might occur to the helmet. That's why I want to leave the imperfections, which are really, really beautiful in some places on this helmet. I mean, look at these little pot marks right there. Those are great. That's potential battle damage, and as we weather the helmet in its finishing stages, you're going to see that get darker and more prominent, and it's really going to add to the beauty of the helmet. Look on the tip right there. You see the little spot right there? That's exactly the kind of thing that you would expect to happen in a 2,000-year-old helmet, which Sabine has stated in the show her helmet is. So let's get to sanding a little bit of this top coat of silver, and then we'll move on to the next part, which is the really elaborate paint job that we're gonna have. Sand, 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 all day long. Sand, 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 while I sing this song. Okay, so I've lightly sanded it, and you can see already that it's getting some of the kind of weathered look that you see in Sabine's actual helmet. Now remember, this is what's under Sabine's paint for the most part. Some of it will still show, like this area she really doesn't paint. So you're gonna see that, and you're gonna see a lot of this sort of weathering. Now, I haven't actually weathered the helmet at all. This is just what we want the base to look like, because this is gonna come out and in layers really kind of help. Look at how great that looks. It really is going to give and help the helmet look aged and battle worn, exactly like the helmet actually is. So that's, and I mean, this was a very, very light sanding with 300 grit sandpaper. It only took me maybe 2 minutes, and I'm hardly even pressing because it was a very thin coat of silver paint. So now we're going to move on to the design of Sabine's paint job itself. And here's a screenshot from the actual TV episode. And as you can see, the colors she is using, I feel, are a lot more mature, and it's showing her growth as the Rebel Alliance defeated the Empire. And this is actually to our benefit. For the helmet itself, it's going to make it a little bit easier for us. But the hard thing is there's still a lot of detail, and getting that done is going to be very difficult. So we're going to start with taping the larger portions off itself, and then we're going to get it painted. So let's do that now. Okay, so we're going to start with the burgundy color, and as you can see in the actual helmet, it comes around here, and then there's large spots, and there's actually some on the back, which you can see in some published pictures from Disney itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape off those larger areas, and I'm going to draw on the tape and use my X-Acto knife to cut off the design that I actually want. I find that this helps me be a little bit more exact, and then after I have those pieces cut, I'm going to cover up everything that I don't want painted, so that I can paint just what needs to be there with the spray paint. You want to make sure that you go slow with the taping. You want to be as exact as possible with this part, because this is what's going to make or break your helmet for you, really. And it's going to save you a lot of time if you spend time right now. So make sure that you have the pieces that you want painted actually covered, and a little bit more. As you can see, it goes over the lines a little bit where I'm going to end up cutting for the purple, and you'll see that in a little while. But take your time. Okay, so here we are. You can see that I've taped almost the entire thing, even though that purple portion that we are going to be doing takes up a small fraction of that. The idea when you want to do something like this is, listen, if you have got the feeling that you have used too much tape, that means you've used just enough, and you actually might want to do a little bit more. Here's an example of where I didn't tape enough. I'm going to come back and I'm going to put some tape right there, even though only this part right here is going to be painted. So now we're going to go ahead and take a pencil, and we're going to draw out the purple lines. And I'm going to do the front here first to show you before I move on to the designs on the side and back that have the purple. So I can't really do that with the camera right now, or I'll try to set it up, but I'm basically just going to use a regular pencil, and I'm going to do my best to sketch it out. Keep in mind that doing this by hand is the way that Sabine would have done it. So being perfect, and if you look close at the cartoon, it's never perfect. It's as close to perfect as a really great artist would be, but Sabine always did her painting by hand. So we want to do it by hand also. And I am by no means an artist. Sabine would be doing a much better job at this than I ever would. Okay, so as you can see, I've got a light pencil outline of the spots that I want to cut out. And these are the spots that I want with the purple paint. You can see that I've done the fairly more intricate design over here, but I haven't done it over here. And that's because I'm doing this by hand, and Sabine is a much better artist than I am. She can probably do a much better job of recreating symmetry, although not perfect, from one side to the other side on her helmet. I can't do that, so I'm gonna cheat, and I'm gonna use my X-Acto knife to cut these pieces out, and I'm gonna attempt to keep them as intact as possible. But back to what I was saying, I'm gonna cut these out, and then I'm gonna put them over here in their right place and cut this side out to have them as symmetrical as possible. And it won't be perfect, but I'm hoping, and it should be, end up being almost by hand symmetrical, as if it were a great artist like Sabine doing it herself. Oh, and one more piece of advice here. If you are cutting the tape out with an X-Acto knife, which I highly recommend, don't press too hard. You only want to press hard enough to get through the tape. You don't want to end up scratching the helmet itself. So be gentle. If you have to go over it a couple times, that's okay. The important thing is that you take your time. Okay, so I've got some of it cut out, and now it's time to go ahead and remove those pieces of tape, and it should be fairly simple to just pick it up and start sliding it off. Now, just like everything else that I've been telling you about this process, go slow. Pay attention to the details. You want, some parts may not have been cut very well. If so, come back with your X-Acto knife and cut it a little bit more, like right there. There's a little spot that wasn't cut that great. You can see the tape ripping away. That's okay. I'm gonna come back and cut it again. But go ahead and remove the pieces. These I'm going to remove very carefully and attach to the other side. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut the footage now so that I can focus on this and give it the attention that it deserves, and I'll come back when it's done. Okay, so I did exactly what I said I was going to do, especially with this portion here. I removed the pieces, and then I brought them to the other side, and I used them as a template. You can see where I've already taken them. Now I wanted to remind you that when you do this, you can't just take them off and then stick them at the right spot. It's gonna be mirrored on the other side. So you have to turn them around, and you have to use the sticky side out. So what I did is I went ahead and I just held it there with one finger, and I traced it with the X-Acto knife to make sure that I had everything in the proper direction. And then I cut it. And as you can see, it worked pretty good. Now, this feathering of where the cutting isn't perfect, that's actually a good thing, because it gives it, in the end, when we paint, it's going to give it a little bit of a weathered look, and it's going to show some imperfections. And the helmet is full of imperfections because it is a helmet that is being used. It's what we want. And see, even though I'm doing this one-handed, notice how carefully I'm taking it off. All right, now for the big piece. Sometimes that'll happen, different layers of tape. Okay, so there we have it. I'm going to clean up a little bit of this, a little bit down there. Maybe not, actually. That'll give it for some nice weather look if I leave that there. So you can see a almost perfectly mirrored version on the other side. That's definitely the way that you want to go. You're going to want to go about doing this portion here. This is not really as important for you to do. It's you're following generally some natural lines of the helmet, so it's not as difficult. But here and here, I highly recommend doing what I just showed you. And now there's some designs here and here. So I'm gonna tape that off and I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna hand draw one side, cut them out, and then bring them to this side to give it as close to a mirrored image as possible. But I'm gonna have to cut that. I really have to look up the reference design because you don't actually see this part of the design at any point in the show. This helmet painting style is only occurs once, and they never show the back. However, Disney did publish these cosplay photos, and so I'm going to use those as reference in order to create the rest of the purple designs. Okay, so here it is, all taped off. All of the spots that I want painted are left uncovered, and all of the spots that I do not want painted is covered completely in tape. Now, this is not a waste of tape. It's really important that you do this kind of thing, and you'll see that we'll be able to recycle a lot of the spots with regards to the tape later. But I wanted to let you know that the first thing that you want to do before you actually paint is go in and really press down all the edges. We don't want it bleeding. A little bit of bleeding is okay because, again, the tiniest bit will make it look like it's naturally just messed up a little bit, but too much and you can tell that something was off. So go through, press it all down. I've already pressed most of it down before I started recording just now. And so it all looks pretty good to me. And so everything, again, that's left uncovered, I want to be purple. So here is the color that I got. It's Rust-Oleum Grape. And this is glossy. It's the only color of purple that they had. But that's okay that it's glossy because I can always take some steel wool or some really fine grit sandpaper and go over it once it dries and take that gloss away. Now when you paint it, you want to make sure that there's you do very, very light coats. You don't want to overdo it. This is not a time that you want or can even handle what's it called, drips. So keep it relatively far away. Use small sprays, small strokes, if you will, using the spray paint, and really just kind of take it easy. At the same time, don't underdo it. It's very easy to do too much. So like I said, make sure you're doing just a little small sprays at a time until it's nice and covered, nice and shiny, and you can not see any more of the silver underneath. And that's looking pretty good on the spot that I missed. Okay, now I'm gonna Let that dry for a moderate amount of time. There's nothing wrong with going long on the drying time. Alright, so there it is. Now we're gonna let it be. Okay, sorry about telling you about the wrong color last time, but as you can see I went ahead and I fixed it. The color that I painted was actually the burgundy, not the purple. But now we are on to the purple, and as you can see, what I went ahead and did was I cut out, just as I did before, the portions that need to be painted purple. And I used the same technique that I used before by doing one side and then mirroring it onto the other side. The important thing to remember when you move on to another color is to cover up what you already just painted and make sure that you get all of it, everything, so that you don't have to mess up and end up repainting yet again. So I've got it all covered up, and even when I stop rolling, I'm going to double check one more time to make sure that I've covered up everything that is supposed to be burgundy, and I'm only going to paint what is supposed to be purple right now. Some of this, when I move on to other colors, I'll take this off early because there's this black part right around here that I'm gonna have to do, but I'm gonna leave on as much as I can. The idea is that you want to leave on as much tape as you can until it's time to take all of it off. But sometimes taking it off in layers is better for you, as you'll see later when I take the stuff that I just put on, I'll take it off so that I can take off some black and then redo it with a little bit more precision. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and head into the garage, and I'm going to paint the purple. I'm not gonna record that section. It should be pretty self-explanatory. And then I will be moving on to the white. Now, just as before, I've gone ahead and I've cut out where I'm gonna paint the next part. This is gonna be white. This one is much less even. I don't know exactly why I tried to do what I did before. I must not have paid that close attention. But again, if you look closely at Sabine's helmet, it's not perfect on her part either because she did it by hand. So I feel like this is gonna be okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint it. Remember, before you do this, you need to go back and tape what you painted before. All this is exposed purple paint. So I'm going to take the tape and cover what I had just painted purple, leave open what I have just cut out, and I'm gonna paint this portion white. Okay, white is finished. You can see it there. I went ahead and removed this lower tape because there's gonna be a black strip that goes here, as well as here. So I'm gonna retape this off, leave the exposed portion where the black is going to be, and paint that next. I wanted to take a moment to show you this little chip right here. This is why you don't have to be perfect. That little chip ends up adding character. It looks amazing. It'll contribute to the battle damage of the helmet. I hope I have many more little tape issues there. And that wasn't paint that chipped off. That was just a little bit of extra tape got there, kind of like how you see some stuff here. I'm hoping along here, once I remove this tape, I'll have a little bit more of that. I also love this scuff mark from when we sanded it before. Although that's going to get covered with black paint, but these scratches down here won't. It just makes it look much better. All right, so we'll be back after this is taped off and I have the black paint. All right, and I've removed all of the tape after painting the black. And the black I did very light. If you look real close, you can see almost like it's wearing away. And that's because when I spray painted it, I just did some real quick strokes on it. I didn't want to, saturate it completely like I did with the burgundy red color or the white or the purple. So there it is. The only thing that's missing right now, paint-wise, is the two-tone blue eyes on each side. And I'm gonna do those by hand. I'm still gonna use a spray paint, but I'm gonna use a brush. But something to talk about is it's obviously not perfect. As you can see, it's a little off here, and it's a little off here. They're not exactly the same. That's okay. It's perfectly fine, because if you take a look at the cartoon, you can see that it's not perfect. These don't match on the cartoon. I don't have them matching here. This I'm probably going to fix with a paintbrush. This is why it's so important to make sure that you're covering everything else while you're painting. I don't know how that got a little bit of purple paint on it, but it did. I must not have covered the very tip of this when I was painting with the purple, and it got a little bit of, just the tiniest bit of purple on there. That's okay though. You can see the back here, the purple edges. So this is Sabine's adult design. One of the things that I really love is that was an accidental extra piece of tape that I never noticed. You can see also here the taping job wasn't perfect, and it just gives it this really nice like weathered look. And so that's going to be it for this first video, which is the painting of the helmet itself. I'm going to go ahead and make another video about weathering it, so that should be up soon. I'll have the eyes here, and then we're going to finish weathering the helmet.